And I think part of what I want to draw your attention to, and it was in your own testimony, in your written testimony, you said the purpose of these sorts of efforts is to disrupt and dismantle criminal enterprises. I mean, just
Correct.
without any question, there's nobody on this panel that's going to quarrel with the use of government power to disrupt criminal enterprises, and yet the witnesses that are going to come after you today are not criminals. They didn't do anything remotely related to the type of enterprise that you're being that you were citing in your testimony. I'm going to read to you from testimony, congressional testimony from the Department of Justice head of asset forfeiture, the Asset Forfeiture Fund. He said this about the forfeiture law. Forfeiture undeniably provides both a deterrent against crime and a measure of punishment for the criminal. Many criminals fear the loss of their vacation homes, fancy cars, businesses, and bloated bank accounts far more than the prospect of a jail sentence. But take, Mrs. Hinder's story. There's nothing remotely related to that type of criminal activity in Mrs. Hinder's story, or in the witnesses that we're going to hear from today, Mr. Clyde or Mr. Hirsch or Mr. Sowers. So you have an opportunity here before these people. Would you, on behalf of the IRS, be willing to apologize to them for the way in which they've been treated and working forward, even re-engaging with Mr. Holding's inquiry about doing your best to influence the U.S. attorneys in these cases? But would you be willing to apologize to these people on behalf of the IRS?
Well, I'm not allowed to know any of the details of individual cases, which is appropriate, so I can't talk about individual cases.
But you've had notice about who our witnesses are, so I'm not asking you to disclose anything.
No.
But you know their stories are public and they've been aggrieved. There's no question, right?
There's no doubt about that, and I regret. We take, as the mission statement says, very seriously our responsibilities to taxpayers. The IRS does have a lot of enforcement powers. Even when you get a letter from us, it's not a fun day in your life. And we try to take and balance that as much as we can. We pulled together early last year a taxpayer bill of rights to try to let taxpayers know. But I mean,
just so we're clear.
So my sense is, going forward under this policy, we should not have people in the circumstances of the witness following us, and that's the goal for the policy. To the extent that people have gotten wrapped up in the system and it's taken too long to resolve it, I regret that. That's a problem with the system. The question was asked, shouldn't there be a way for people able, however they got there, to come in quickly? 14 days may be a little short, but there ought to be a way efficiently for people to be able to come in and make their claims. As I say, 60% of the people just disappear, who are the criminal types we're chasing. But even with the policy, I do think that we ought to make sure that there's a way for people efficiently and quickly to be able to say, well, okay, there's an allegation of criminal issues, or in fact, if some agent doesn't follow the policy, to be able to come in a reasonable period of time and be able to make their case without hiring lawyers, without waiting for a year or two. A year or two,
Commissioner,
and the rest of these are not out of the question.
The IRS grabbed these taxpayers by their throat and squeezed them and squeezed them and squeezed them without mercy and nearly ruined them and made their lives miserable. Would you be willing today, on behalf of the IRS, to apologize to those taxpayers who were so abused?
Anyone who actually was not engaged in structuring, was not engaged in processing and laundering illegally gained funds, who ended up stuck in the system, some of it beyond our control, I think deserve an apology.
And would that apology come today from you, the Commissioner of the IRS, to them?
I would apologize for anyone, not just in this area, anyone who is not treated fairly under the code. I apologize to. Our goal is to make sure that taxpayers in all circumstances are treated fairly. They're treated the same way. It goes back to the issues about determinations for C4 cases. I've said from the start, I apologize there for anybody who got caught up in that delays. Taxpayers have to be comfortable. They're all going to get treated fairly, the same way as everybody else, no matter who they are, what organization they belong to, who they voted for in the last election. If you hear from us or if you're dealing with us, you should be comfortable you're going to be treated the same way and fairly as everybody else. And to the extent that the system makes mistakes, we should recognize those, and I'm comfortable. I'm sorry the mistakes happen if they happen, and I'm happy to apologize to say if taxpayers have gotten themselves into a situation that is not their fault, they are not consciously structuring, they're not avoiding taxes. There are a lot of people out there structuring to avoid letting us know what they earn. They weren't, if they paid their taxes, they weren't doing anything consciously illegal, and they got wrapped up in the system. That was a mistake, and I apologize for that.